what specifically would the special election be for?
That's a good one. Thank you. Special election, at least as proposed as of today, would be 2 ballot measures. One would be to sort of divert, rip off, whatever you want to call, a large chunk of the revenues that currently go to county first 5 commissions. Those are the tobacco tax dollars raised by Prop 10 1998. So that would be ballot measure number 1. Ballot measure number 2 would be a constitutional amendment that would impose the temporary tax extensions and provide a framework for realignment. And I'll say 2 things about realignment as well. The governor is proposing to shift from the state to counties a chunk of money that would be in that constitutional amendment, plus either new or a greater share of responsibility for, let's see if I can, I'll start from birth to getting other ones. So, you know, child welfare services, foster care, adoptions, juvenile corrections, low-level adult corrections, drug, alcohol, and mental health services, along with some funky stuff like port security and fire protection in rural areas. But which is sort of there's a backstory there, which ask me if you want to know. That would be done through a constitutional amendment in part, so that that part of the new tax dollars or extended tax dollars don't count towards the state's school spending guarantee. And that just gets into the nuances of how the Prop 98 school spending guarantee works. I should have said, and when I talked about cuts, the one thing that wasn't on that pie chart is K-12 education, which actually is cut just a teeny tiny amount. It's essentially flat funded in the governor's budget. I think the sort of under conventional wisdom is if the taxes go down, or if not all of the spending cuts proposed in January go through, the next level of cuts comes out of schools.
I was just wondering though, for some organizations that are you know, thinking of sort of creative ways to increase revenue through big banks, big corporations, do you see ways for people to inject those pieces into the conversation, or was what they're putting on the ballot pretty much set for them?
There are $2 million in corporate tax increases in that proposal between the enterprise zone, 70 cents on the dollar of which goes to corporations with assets over $10 billion, and modification of one of the 3 dark of night tax loopholes. So there's a big chunk of corporate money. And unless, and I'm going to put in a plea here, unless legislators start hearing from people about that, it's not going to be on the table, and there'll be $2 billion more in cuts on the table. And that's just sort of a fact, and that's funny that he's assuming that he can get a 2/3 vote in the legislature for him, which is going to be tough. I'm giving the governor 2-to-1 odds, and I don't gamble. If there's I think he has a 2-to-1 chance of getting something that looks like his budget through the legislature sometime in March. I think that that's because the legislature in both parties on some level understands that if they don't do what he wants, they're going to have to do it themselves. And I think that terrifies them. And I think they don't know how to do it. And I actually think this guy, unlike his predecessor, is moderately serious about not signing a tricks and gimmicks budget, which past history shows us the last governor was more than willing to do that. I'm not sure this guy is. I think that in order to do it fast, that it's going to, I would also say, sort of the same, probably a 3-to-1, 4-to-1 odds, so it will look moderately close, not 100% close to what he proposed. Because once you start pulling big chunks off the table, then it's feeding frenzy. And I think that is why, and I'm seeing a few nods in the room, that's why a lot of people that normally come out with guns blazing on January 11th when they see the governor's budget, including my organization, have been more muted than we often are. Because, you know, it isn't entirely shared pain, but there's some degree of shared sacrifice there, certainly more than we've seen in recent years. And I think there's an understanding that if you pull CalWORKs off the table, you know, then the corporate tax piece is going to go off the table. If you start pulling large chunks out, then it's going to fly apart in a million different directions. That said, I think there will be some changes. You know, and I know of some that people are working to, and people are working really hard to say, structure the cut to the program I care most about this way, not that way. You can get almost as many dollars out of doing it. And people are working, and it's a whole different vibe in Sacramento this year than I've seen in the 22 years that I've been there. Are you talking about the ACE et al. Proposal on some of the banks? I think just from a policy development standpoint, getting a new idea on the table between now and mid-March is going to be tough. If you know, a new idea that's an old idea, we've already got bill language drafted and vetted, maybe. I think, if it's the proposal that I'm familiar with, I think Prop 26 throws a little convention in. You know, if Prop 26 had failed, I'd say high likelihood. With Prop 26, I think it's really tough. And that to me was a tragedy in last November, was Prop 26.
Can we start a conversation in the state of California? You know, California are the largest congressional delegation in Congress. You know, so.
I think the odds of getting much, if anything, out of this Congress are somewhere, 0 to nil. And in fact, if you look at the president's budget, there's a nasty cut. You know, it's better than the Republican budget, but you know, he cuts WIC, he cuts LIHEAP, which is weatherization and energy assistant. He's cutting, pretty deep in a variety of domestic programs which don't have a direct impact on the state budget, but will pull money out of the same communities that will be affected by the state budget. The one thing that's potentially winnable, short term, not a ton of money, but I'll take anything. I'm not proud, I work in the nonprofit sector, is a proposal that Friends of Allies and the Center of Budget Policy Priorities and National Employment Law Project have put together. One of the things that was in the original Recovery Act was helping states out through the federal budget, loaning money to states to offset shortfalls in unemployment insurance trust funds. Because California's the deficit in our unemployment insurance trust funds is almost as big as the deficit in the budget. Starting this year, the state has to pay interest on that loan out of our general fund. Can't be done out of the UI trust fund. And that's about $400 million. I'd say there's 5–10% chance we succeed there, but that's better than the 0% on virtually everything else. So
thank you so much, Jean.